Medieval Shopkeeper Simulator just came out this past week. I hounded the developers about this game from the day I first heard about it, and my excitement only got bigger and bigger. Manage a merchant empire, organize workers, and plan a financial strategy that would have in-game universe-altering impact. And I don't even care about early access alpha status. I am a management simulator addict. I've played games with basically no UI or explanation and loved every single second, delving into the deepest secrets of the games until I became a fiduciary god. I play these games a lot. I own basically the entire management simulator genre of games. I even troll itch.io for new and interesting takes on the genre, and I'm probably the only person who routinely searches Steam by tags for new releases in the management category. I barely have to buy games anymore as a games critic on YouTube, and yet these are the games that I will choose to actually pay money for. Unfortunately, MSS doesn't quite scratch the itch I thought it might. I don't even blame the game, it's a perfectly fine game. I'm sure that as it continues to expand and get updated, I'll go back and play it more, but I figured now would be a great time to talk about what makes a good management simulator. There's a game I always go back to over and over again, and I find myself dumping 6 or 8 hours at a time into it. Mad Games Tycoon isn't new. It's been out since September of 2016, and it hasn't been updated since April 2017. In fact, after leaving early access, it only saw 3 updates ever, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, fairly incomplete. That obviously doesn't really matter since it's still one of the best Tycoon games I've found, and it's like 70% of what I want from a management sim. If the game simply had mod support through the Steam Workshop, it'd probably be 80% of the way there. The reason I love this game is that there are so many options for me as the player to pursue or not. I can make super high quality games or churn out mass-produced garbage with incredibly high marketing budgets. I can push out sequels and remasters, then bundle them all together into inexpensive game collections with minimal bug fixes. I can make a lean indie game machine that produces games infrequently but with incredible quality. I can publish other companies' games. I can make money just physically manufacturing discs and game copies for other game publishers. Or I can do free-to-play games with microtransactions. I can buy my competitors. I can develop a console. I can force my subsidiary former competitors to only produce games for my consoles. Often in a successful run, I will do all of these to various levels as I become a behemoth company with no true rivals. The multiple pathways to success are what I so enjoy about this game, and it's why I keep coming back despite the many problems. No, I can't develop a Steam replicant where I can publish other games companies online. I can only publish games physically. No, I can't have multiple consoles out there in the world. A new release instantly kills the old. And of course, you're always ultimately the micromanaging game designer who has to literally direct every single employee, every single game, and every single technology in every single game. Once you're at the top, there's nowhere to go. Games require way too many staff, technologies take way too long to implement. Rooms require exorbitantly large floor plans while still being so slow that 90% of your staff sit around doing absolutely nothing, and there's no true way to develop an incredible 10 out of 10 game without being lucky and having good RNG timing. But even with these problems, the freedom to attempt to do it my way makes it a game that I come back to time and time again. Now, it's not entirely fair to compare a game like Mad Games to Medieval Shopkeeper. Mad has a larger scope and it's far less personal feeling. You might have your avatar in the game world in Mad, but in Medieval, you are personally moving through the world and making your impact by personally crafting, replenishing, delivering orders, and interacting with customers on a one-on-one basis. It's a much more visceral approach and isn't necessarily designed to work on a grander scale. It's not designed to be a resource balancing act like The Spatials, Factorio, Interstellar Transport Company, or Big Pharma, where you spend most of your time improving the efficacy of supply lines. It's not a competitive product builder like Mad, Computer Tycoon, or Startup Company. It doesn't strive for the painful realism of This Grand Life or the blissful time wasting of Slime Rancher. All of these are as vastly different from Medieval Shopkeeper as Skyrim is to Divinity Original Sin 2, which, while both are fantasy class-based RPGs, anyone who's played them both can clearly tell you they are different. The closest games to Medieval Shopkeeper are Music Band Manager, YouTuber's Life, Turmoil, and Basement. Time management games where your gameplay session is more about short segments of heavy activity broken up by slower preparatory interludes. You use your downtime to improve yourself, get things ready for the next morning, use your knowledge of the game world to try to prophesize what you might need the next day to lower the time you'll spend running around, and therefore improve your overall profitability. Which in the end is the point of these games, profitability. The power fantasy of video games. Unlike a lot of AAA releases, the power fantasy isn't to mercilessly bash spectral enemies with an axe or survive a zombie horde. But it absolutely is the fantasy of mercilessly destroying your enemy's bank accounts and surviving the marketplace. It's the way these games allow you to embrace this fantasy that is the most fun, and it's why I believe the best management simulators should be systemic in their design. If you've never heard of systemic game design, there's a nice little card in the corner and a link in the description to a fantastic video from Mark Brown of the Game Maker's Toolkit that digs into it in depth. But the idea at its core is that rather than being tightly controlled and scripted, everything is instead designed around systems and how those systems interact. The best example of this is Dwarf Fortress, and to really explain it, I'll relay a single anecdote of systems in that game. After an update that allowed for dwarves to get drunk in a tavern, a player noticed that his pet cats were randomly dying. This started to become more prevalent, and the developers looked into it and found that the cats were dying from alcohol poisoning. However, cats aren't supposed to drink alcohol, so how are they getting it? Long story short, several years before, Dwarf Fortress had added the ability for dwarves to get dirty and leave footprints. In a search for realism, they additionally added in a blinking system to clear the dirt from dwarves' eyes because of course they could get dirty eyeballs. The same system would later be used in the in-game cats, who would routinely clean themselves, as cats do. Put all that together and suddenly you had dwarves spilling beers on themselves and on the floor, then tracking that booze around their bases, which would get onto the cat's paws, who would then clean themselves, ingest the alcohol, and die of alcoholic overdose. This systemic approach allows for the kind of incredible interconnection that tycoon gamers so desperately seek, influencing the world around them as they manipulate the game world to see the highest returns possible. Medieval Shopkeeper and other titles tend to utilize this almost exclusively in terms of product pricing, in that as you buy or sell more items, you'll see the game world react by lowering prices on items with lower demand than supply and raise prices on more rare items. More rarely, you'll see actual supply of a product begin to lessen as it is purchased more often, but it's rarely anything quite as extensive as you might see in a real market. Weird quirks tend to show up in real marketplaces that we don't see in these strictly controlled game markets. Think back to World of Warcraft, you know you've played it, and its auction house system, especially on established servers. Low-level materials that normally would be worth next to nothing start to raise in value as higher-leveled characters stop wanting to invest the time collecting materials in starter zones, oftentimes becoming more valuable than middle-tier resources. Even the CSGO skin economy shows similar outliers when you look at the value of skins that can, potentially, trade up into much higher-value skins. These quirks only show up because of unintended interactions inherent in the systems. See, I don't particularly care what the product is that I'm selling in these games, and offering pharmaceuticals versus fantasy weapons doesn't ultimately change my enjoyment of the game. I could just as easily be selling any of a wide variety of MacGuffins as long as I can affect the ability to sell that item, increase its profitability, and compete with others. I want to start as a mom and pop, and then establish myself like Walmart, develop my own store brands, and start driving my competitors into ruin. One upcoming title that seems to do this pretty well based on my early impressions with an alpha is Spinortality. It doesn't really matter what you're selling here, it's all about affecting the world to ensure your own immortality. I'm pretty excited for it. What makes a good management game for you? Are you a fan of tycoon games? And if you are, what's the thing that you enjoyed most? I'm expecting a lot of Roller Coaster Tycoon killing guests by placing them in water comments, of course. If you like this video, please leave a like and share it everywhere. Tell your mom about it. If you didn't like this video, then don't do either of those, but if you did, you can watch another one in the corner right now, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.